See, my job when I work with clients, I'm Rosetta Stone. I'm helping you translate who you are through clothing so you can better communicate who you are in the environments that you operate in.
People literally judge you based on how you wear, like what you wear. And I started to buy different clothing.
What I tell guys is, man, you have to always exercise prudence, even more so when you start reaching the top.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Because now that momentum really will kill you. Yeah. It is sad to say now you can make less mistakes.
Mm-hmm. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the TMCT podcast, where we have amazing guests. And today I'm really excited about today's guest. He's special. He's a really special but high performer. And when I met him the first time, I knew that we needed to connect. We needed to do things because of his look. Legit, it was because of his look. And so we have on my man, Jay. What's up, bro? How you doing?
Doing amazing. Blessed by the best.
Blessed by the best, bro.
Blessed by the best. Appreciate you having me.
Man, thank you so much. Yeah. We work out at the same gym at Rich and Fit. Mm-hmm. And somebody was like, yo, bro, you need to connect with Jay. Yeah. And the reason why was because you have a group called The Standard. Yep. What do you guys do?
Yeah, man. So I think it's a few things. So essentially what The Standard is, it's a private community for high-performing men centered around connecting like-minded men through experiences, socials, and events all across the world. We operate in every major city in the U.S. And essentially the thing that we found is for a lot of guys, especially high performers, when they look around them, they end up figuring out that a lot of the guys that hang around them are backpacks and people that just want to be carried. Right. And eventually, as you know, if you wear a backpack long enough, your back starts hurting.
It starts to hurt.
Right.
Yep.
So what we want to do is we want to connect guys with other like-minded men that are just like them, so they don't feel like every relationship that they have is transactional and are with people that just want something from them. Right.
Wow.
We wanted to give them other men, like-minded people, where they actually could learn from these men. They actually could build relationships because they're equally yoked. Right. And gain inspiration. And I think for a lot of men, they're looking for that. They're looking for, community. They're looking for other like-minded men. They're looking for other ambitious men and men that want to get to the next level, because as you know, the higher you go up, the thinner the oxygen is. Yeah. Right. So not everybody can go up there with you.
Not at all.
So really what it is, it's creating that environment for men and giving multiple areas where these men can connect, right? Because as we know, men we're very multi varied in the things that we like and the taste levels of the things we like to experience, and we kind of give men really a wide variety of areas to connect.
Bro, you said a lot. Yeah. I absolutely love the high performance men piece. Yeah. How do you guys define high performance?
Man, so that's the thing. I think a lot of times high performing tends to just get centered around the bucket of finance. Right. But when you do that, what I say is it creates kind of this Johnny Bravo effect. You focus on guys who just do upper body, but, skip the lower body and they become unbalanced. Yeah. So for us, it's a myriad of things. It's not just being high performing from a finance perspective, but hey, are you high performing from a character standpoint? Are you high performing in your spirituality? Are you high performing in your physical fitness? Right. So for us, it's really looking at finding a guy who is well balanced in all areas, not only financially, but spiritually, emotionally, physically, etc. And for us, it really boils down to men who are focused on building legacy, right? So they care about their last name, they care about creating a family. Men who love assisting, right? Okay, yeah, you've made $1 million, but how many people have you also helped make $1 million? And last but not least, excellence in all areas as a man. Those are kind of our tenets and our core values,
bro. So let's break that down, because I absolutely love breaking it out into the different tenets and core values. Let's start with spirituality. The men that comes into this group are spiritual to some degree. What does that look like? Yeah,
so for us, right, I think it's most of the guys in our group tend to share basic either Judeo or Muslim values. And if they don't, it's something that they're open to, right? Because obviously you're going to have guys that are a little bit stronger in certain areas than others. And again, excellence isn't a destination, it's a pursuit, but they are of mind to at least have that as an importance of something that they're looking right, to grow in that area. But yeah, for most guys, I think they have that core value, right? So again, traditional Judeo-Christian Muslim values are what most guys in our group tend to have.
Why is spirituality so important?
Because you have to be connected to something.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I think it's a lonely life if you don't believe in anything past yourself, because if you don't believe anything past yourself, you only do things for yourself.
Oof.
And that's a very dangerous life to live.
Man, I like to share that there are four main elements of a GPS.
Mm-hmm.
I use a GPS to teach a lot of frameworks. Right. And the first element of a GPS for a GPS to work is the connection.
Yeah.
It got to be connected to T-Mobile, Verizon, something.
Yeah.
Like without connection, nothing else works. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that connection is the main first piece that I like. And another part that you talked about after connection is what for you guys in terms of the tenets? Oh,
are you talking about after the spirituality piece? Yeah, I think physical fitness.
Physical fitness.
Right? Like that's huge, right? I think just as a man, you have to be fit, you have to be healthy.
Yeah.
Right? You can't I think perform at a high level. You can't be focused on legacy and building a family if you aren't healthy. You have to take responsibility in that. And I think physical fitness is one of those things where it just comes down to accountability as a man.
Wow.
Right? Being mindful of what you put in your body, what you're eating, and then working out. Anybody can get up and work out. Right? Granted, of course, there's certain exceptions, but all those other things ruled out, anybody can work out.
But were those exceptions because they didn't work out? Or they weren't healthy, right? Was it caused because of the lack of health, right?
Yeah. Well, my thing is like, if you're a paraplegic, okay, we might,
right?
We might. Sure. Now, although I will say I've seen some dudes in the wheelchair hitting the pull-ups too.
I'm just saying,
you know, so there is a level where it becomes a choice, but that's really big because as a man, I think you have to take pride in your appearance, how you're presenting yourself to the world.
Let's dive deep into that, because there's health, there's the appearance, and then there's the how you feel about yourself. Yeah. All kind of bucketed up into this.
Yeah, and so see that's a tricky thing, right? Because when people say how you feel about yourself, it's easy to fake yourself out, right? Because you can be extremely unhealthy but trick yourself into feeling good about it. So it's very important to sometimes disconnect feeling, right, from the discipline and action of what needs to get done.
Wow.
Because a lot of people can feel good being broke.
Yeah.
Right?
You get addicted to it.
Right? You feel good in that state. You can feel good in toxic relationships. You can feel good with a lot of things. So I think it's important to really, I think it boils down to having standards. You know, I tell people this all the time. It's hilarious. So, you know, prior to working out at Rich and Fit, it wasn't like I was out of shape, right? Like I've always, been in sports. I've always kept myself up. But it's something interesting that happens when you put yourself in a new environment. It's something interesting that happens with your standard because, at one point, just being lean and cut that was good enough for me. But then, you work out with some monsters like Timur Tosin and you're like, dang, like they back got muscle. You know what I mean? Like, hey, 225, that's the warm up. Yeah. So there's something that happens now with your standards and how you even perceive yourself and how you look. And I think that happens in all areas, right? Even with finance, right? It happens with your spirituality. It happens with how you view, how you are as a husband, father, etc. It's
Absolutely.
Something about being in a new environment, being in a new community. And at the end of the day, what I always tell people is your community determines your composition.
Oof.
Right? So you got to choose to mix wisely.
Yeah. Bro, and I'll say, bro, being around you guys and specifically you, because how you dress and guys, if you go to this dude's IG or something like that and you just see how he carries himself, you're like, I need a new standard, right? You need a new standard, right? And that happened to me. Yeah. And it wasn't on some like keeping up with the Joneses. Yeah. It's just like, man, I could do better in this area, right? And so since then, we worked out some things and getting prepped because now I'm raising my standard based on some of the things that I'm like, yo, bro, like I want to step it up in this area, and we will get into why. But like you said, being in that new environment made me start to desire a new standard. How important is that for men to to desire, because I feel like we may desire it, but then there's this,
oh my God,
this pressure.
Man, so look, and it's very interesting, right? You know, shout out to my business partner, Hafiz, man, amazing business partner. He's who I actually built the standard with, but we talk to thousands of men.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of men, because what a lot of people don't realize with the standard, you know, me and Hafiz, we do the final interview. So it's not just like you apply and you have money, you can join. Like, no, it's an application process, and we do these final interviews. So the thing that begins to happen is when you talk to so many men, you begin to notice patterns. And when you start noticing these patterns, you start to figure out exactly why men are where they're at, right? So when it comes to that, I think it's a couple things. The first thing is, you know, everybody talks about, man, you know, you got to be hungry, right? They talk about, oh, you got to be hungry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to be hungry for the opportunity. You got to be hungry for that state. You got to have that something in you that wants to get you to the next level. But what I tell people is, right, and this is the other side that people don't talk about is, yeah, you know, you got to be hungry, but you also got to be willing to eat. And what I mean by that is, like, you have to be willing to put the fork and the knife out. You got to be willing to, you know, cut the steak. You know, this isn't second grade. This isn't kindergarten. You know, you can't expect somebody to put a bib on your neck. You know, choo train the food into your mouth. Yeah, you have to be willing to go out and eat as well. And a lot of people, you know, what I realize is they don't want to eat themselves. They want to be fed. Right? Shoot. They want somebody to feed them the food. Mm-hmm. Right?
You're not putting in the work.
They don't want to do it, man. Right? And the reality is, and this is the other part, the standard part, and why it's so important to have a standard for yourself is, as long as good enough is good enough, it'll never be good enough.
Run that back. Run that back.
As long as good enough is good enough, it will never be good enough.
Wow. And so many people live being good enough.
Yeah.
So many people live being good enough. They never hit their potential because this is good enough. No standard.
Yeah, no, they don't. I mean, and like I said, it's frustrating as a man because everyone talks about, man, I'm willing to die for the opportunity, man. Give me an opportunity. So many guys, man, even guys I went to school with, always hit me like, Joe, I want an opportunity. And as soon as I give it, they do nothing with it. Mm-hmm. So everybody wants to die for the opportunity, or is saying they're down for the opportunity, but they're willing to die for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of it boils down to the standard. And a lot of your standards are based on your community, and they got the wrong type of composition. Yeah. Right? You know, they're not trail mix, they're kibble and bits. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, because of who they're hanging around. And until you're able to change that, man, and raise your standard for yourself, you know, you tend to get stuck. Even, like I said, with the money thing, it's so interesting. And I always tell people, man, awareness manages arrogance. Right? So, you let's say, you start making 10 grand a month. There's some guys with 10 grand a month, you think that's everything until you start hanging around people making 100 grand a month. Yeah. Right. So my thing that I always tell guys, especially even for me, like I'm always looking for that new room that is going to change my perspective and also manage my arrogance. Yeah. I never, like, my thing is, my goal is never to feel maxed out.
I love that.
I always want to feel like, dang, okay.
I got work to do.
Yeah.
I got work to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bro, that's really good, because even like when we started coming around and being in the gym.
Yeah.
Bro, where I used to work out at, I used to be the man.
Oh, yeah. This brother swore. I don't know if you can tell from this polo right now. That brother not playing in the gym.
but I used to be the man, bro. But coming over here, I'm dead.
Yeah.
I'm like, whew, these dudes right here, man.
Hit the deck with the push-ups?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And so this room manages my arrogance. Yeah. It got me humbled real quick. Real quick, because them dudes is doing work.
Oh man.
Right? What? And so even with dress, how you look. Yeah. Like when I came to get fitted for my suit, you taught me something, right? Yeah. And I remember texting you because what you taught me was, he's like, hey man, where do you wear your pants? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I wear it right here. I thought that was the hip thing based on the community that I was around before. Yeah. And now I'm trying to elevate. I'm getting a new standard. And he said, bro, when you wear your pants here, I would raise it up a little bit. Yeah. It makes you look taller, and you broke it down. You really broke it down. And when you broke it down, it made me be like,
Right.
I'm like, shoot.
Yeah.
And the same day I was traveling and I was in the airport, I'm like, yo, bro, you got me pulling my pants up, man. Because now my standards are changing. Mm-hmm. What made you get this knack for fashion, the look standard?
Yeah, man. So I'll kind of do the Spark Notes version of the story, because I always tell people, fashion was the last thing I thought I was gonna do. The absolutely last thing, right? Like, if you would have asked anybody when I was growing up, high school, like, I was gonna be the next Kobe Bryant. I was mental. I was the guy who would go in the gym and I would try to make 1,000 shots, right? We used to have this thing called the gun. And basically it's this basketball shit where you can shoot it and it passes it back to you. And it has like a counter on it as well. Yeah. So it lets you know how many shots you made, missed, etc. Man, I would be on that thing so much. Like, I remember I almost broke it one time. Like I was using it so much. But man, my story arc is very interesting. So, growing up, of course, basketball head, but going into my junior going into my senior year, I broke my arm twice in the same year.
Wow.
Both times were a double fracture. And the second time I broke it, my bone literally came out my arm. Right. Wow. And I never forget, my teammates literally ran out the gym and I'm walking to the nurse's office literally by myself. And it was the first time I ever thought about the ball stop bouncing, right? About, man, like, I don't know if I even want to play basketball anymore. Fast forward, I end up having surgery, wake up from surgery. I have no feeling at all on my left hand. So I'll talk with my doctor about it, and he says, hey, man, look, you have nerve damage. And the thing about nerve damage is they can't tell you when it's going to come back. It may never come back. So now, not only am I going into the biggest summer of my basketball life, right? Because I had all these AU camps lined up. I had a lot of things I was supposed to be doing. Now I'm going into my senior season only being able to play with one hand, right? So I start the season. I still had no feeling at all in my left hand. So now all these, potential looks I had, now it's going to D2, D3, NIA. And I just remember walking in the gym one day, right? Because I had block scheduling on my off. Whenever I had an hour and a half to myself, I would go to the gym on a practice. And I remember picking up the basketball, and it was the first time basketball felt like work. It was the weirdest thing ever, right? Because it always felt fun. Like, I loved it. And that was a moment I knew. I was like, man, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. So fast forward, I ended up going to a college visit at Georgia Southern University. And I ended up meeting a guy by the name of Adam Hazlett, right? And he comes to me while I'm with my mom. He says, hey, look, man, we're having a program. It's called Pathways to Success. It's for incoming men in the freshman class. We're only selecting 30. Would you be interested in applying? Now, at the time, I wasn't, super involved on campus. I wasn't, doing mock trial. I wasn't doing student government. It was strictly basketball. But I had all this extra energy. I didn't know where to place it. So I said, you know what? Forget it, man. Fine. I'll apply. So I ended up applying, and about a month or two later, I ended up getting in. And they ended up having us come to school early, about a week before school actually started, got us situated. And it was at that time that they ended up pairing us up with mentors. And these were guys who were either their fourth year on campus or getting a master's or doctoral degree. And what made it so special is because it was the first time I saw guys that looked like me, right, that actually were choosing to dress up, right? Like, they didn't get in trouble. This wasn't chapel, they're not going to church. Like, they're actively choosing to dress up.
It's not court.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but, these guys were involved. These were homecoming kings. These were SGA presidents. These were guys who had their own pseudo organization. And, I'll never forget it. One day, I was with a couple of my friends, and we were in our dining commons called Landrum. And about, 10 or 12 of them all walked in at the same time. And it was like time stopped. Right? Like, the lunch lady stopped serving chicken. The girls stopped talking at the table. And at that moment, I became fascinated about what caused that response, right? Like, what caused that reaction in the room just based on what they were wearing. And that was freshman year. And I've been in this space over a decade now since.
Wow.
And that's what got me in.
Time stopped.
Yeah.
Just based on how it looks.
Yeah. And what I call that now is a term I've coined called perception economics.
Perception economics.
Yeah. Leveraging image and income through what I call the PSI method, which is, personal image, social media presence, and, your internal mindset. And the reason I say that is because, in Atlanta, you get a lot of potholes.
Yeah.
right? And the worst thing is when that tire light comes on. So, you know, what the PSI does is it makes sure that you maintain your pressure levels when you're going through the vehicle called life by making sure you're leveraging your image in all capacities, right?
Yeah.
Not only online, but in person. Because the reality is the brain processes images 60,000 times faster than it does words. So what people see is always going to say a lot more about you than what you will initially say. This is why memes are so popular. This is why GIFs are so popular. You know, first modes of communication, if you think about it, were what?
Yeah.
They were pictures.
Yeah.
When you go to the Egyptian, you know, ancient temples, the Mayan, the caveman, what were they doing? They were doing pictures.
Yeah.
So for me, it was developing a deep understanding of that, and then seeing how I could leverage that in my everyday life through clothing. And yeah, man, it's been amazing to see the responses from not only men that I've worked with, but also even men in my community, you know, teaching them these principles and having them, you know, experience it firsthand.
Yeah, bro, this is amazing to me, because if I go to the perception economics of my community that I used to be a part of, right? I moved from Trinidad. That's where I'm from.
Yep.
Moved to New York, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And was ingrained as to how to dress. I dress like them. And so hoodies is normal for me. I'm like, man, this is normal. This is how we dress.
Yeah.
And we moved to Tennessee temporarily last year. And I dressed the way I'm comfortable in my hoodies.
Yeah.
And I remember we were parked outside of the gym. I'm waiting for my wife to come downstairs. And a lady comes, she knocks on the door, the glass, and she's like, "Who are you waiting on? what are you doing here?"
Yeah.
Because I got my hoodie on. I'm in the car. I'm in my own car. I'm like, "Oh, I take my hoodie off." I'm like, "I'm waiting for my wife. We are entrepreneurs. We're real estate investors, X, Y, and Z." But I didn't notice she had her hand behind her back. And so she's like, "Oh, okay," because I just wanted to know. And she pulls out her gun and she shows it to me. She's like, "I'm the laundry lady. I own the laundry right here. And one of my guests said that there was this guy sitting in the car with a hoodie on and they felt uncomfortable. So I just wanted to see what was up."
Oh, wow.
And bro.
Oh, that's aggressive.
Bro.
God dang.
But because of the perception.
I get it though. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, I get it. So here's what I always tell my clients, right? I think it's a few things. The first thing is I'm never going to explicitly say that you shouldn't wear something, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing about clothing is it's situational. It's contextual, right? And in certain environments, the hoodie makes sense. But what I will say to my clients is you have to be very cognizant of what you want to communicate. See, my job when I work with clients, I'm Rosetta Stone. I'm helping you translate who you are through clothing so you can better communicate who you are in the environments that you operate in. And the reality is what a lot of men struggle with is they go into certain environments wanting to speak English, not realizing that the clothing and the image that they're bringing off is Espanol.
Bro.
And they're wondering why it's a disconnect. And it doesn't matter about the competence level, right? Because you can be as competent as ever in that situation. But if you're speaking Spanish to people who only speak English, it's never going to connect.
Never. And that was something that took me a while. And I'm still going through that transition. Like, I'm still going through that transition because there's this remain authentically you piece of it. That's like, oh, I gotta be who I am. But
this is good.
Here's where it started to screw me. And because I raised a few $1 million for capital for real estate.
Yeah, congrats on that. That's huge, by the
way. Appreciate it. And when I would always need to open my mouth to connect with people because of how I looked.
Yeah. And
so people wouldn't pay me mind until I opened my mouth.
Oh, so, all right. So there's so many layers to this, right?
Yeah.
There's three things. Three things. The first thing is I love your point because there is a layer where there's guys who are performing right now And that's what I was told, that there's a divide oftentimes between guys who have the performance and the perception.
Mm-hmm.
The guys who have the performance look at the guys that are perception with disdain and say, man, you guys just care about looking good. At the end of the day, I'm getting money, right? I don't care. I don't need all that because I'm getting money. And then you have the guys with the perception. They looking at the guys' performance like, hey, man, you just hate because you don't look good. But there's something magical that happens when you combine the performance with the perception. Because to your point, you raised $1 million. You're dropping 30 a night. But the issue that you felt and that you're running into is you had to drop 30 a night on 30 shots.
Yeah.
Where if you added the perception, you could probably do it on 10.
Woo!
Right?
Yeah.
And that's really when the game changed. And then the second thing, which is so big, because I love this, there's always this conversation around, man, I don't want to change myself. I'm going to stay true to myself. Right? Like I don't want to sell out. Right? And here's where the incongruency is for most men when they have this mindset. Do you have that same thing in business? When you're only making 6 figures in your business and then you wanted to go to 7, did you say to yourself, man, I don't want to sell out because I'm used to doing it this way. I don't want to add processes.
Yeah.
I don't want to add. I like working with the customer myself.
You got to.
You evolved.
You have to.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the other side to that is the thing I love about menswear is menswear isn't just suiting. There's layers, and I actually talk about this in perception economics. I break it down into where there's 3 archetypes, right? Archetype 1 is for the casual industry. So think the gym owner, maybe the tradesman, maybe the internet entrepreneur, the person who makes a lot of income but is not in very formal environments. However, his income calls for him to at least need to be able to present himself in a certain light. But obviously, like those guys, they don't need to be in a suit. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Archetype 2 is more of a mix, right? Think about like the real estate agent, maybe a salesman, people who are in slightly formal environments, but still, interact with clients casually. So obviously you don't want to be in a full suit and tie because it may come across too stiff to that client, but you still need to have a slightly elevated look. And then you have archetype 3, which is like your banker, finance. This is like your most formal environments where you kind of need to, bring out all the stops. So there are layers in menswear, and there are ways to make sure that we stay true to your core, right? And who you are as a person, while just doing that in a more elevated manner.
Bro, I've never even broken it down to that down. Like I don't know if y'all paying attention, but this is like some real sauce right here, right? Because that alone, that categorization alone helps you to paint a picture as to, oh, I fit right here. You know what I mean? And my wife and I, we just came back from South Africa.
And I remember you telling me.
And we did Emirates business class. Right. And to go, we like corny. So we did some matching shirts and stuff like that. We love corny, right? And so I had on like sweatpants and that type of stuff. And in Emirates business class at the back, there's a bar. And I had a mission. I'm like, bro, these flights is like some 12 grand flights and stuff like that.
It's not cheap.
It's not cheap,
it's not
right?
cheap, right? It's not cheap.
So I'm like, the people who are going to be here, they got something that I want too. I'm like, I'm gonna make sure I get some networking out of this, right? So to go, I had on my sweats, my matching shirt, all of that. And I go and I pose by the bar to meet people. And I met some people. But I had to work a little bit more. On my way home, I told my wife, I'm like, I'm gonna do an experiment. I'm gonna put on some better clothes, look a little bit more dressed. Nice jeans, different, a little bit different, and see what happens. I'm like, before I had to approach people, on the way home, people came and said hi to me. I'm like, do you think this is by chance? Or do you like, because I was trying to show her, I'm like, people literally judge you based on how you wear, like what you wear. And I started to buy different clothing. Because I'm like, babe, I gotta like raise in private capital. I gotta change how I look. Like it's cool for me to travel because I hate going through TSA and taking off my pant, my belt and all that type of stuff. But sweats versus me going in a lounge and being able to connect with my ideal audience, what's the trade-off, right? And so I started to change because I knew that in these airports I was going to be in lounges and I wanted to connect with people. And so I started back wearing jeans, bro, like just jeans. I'm like, I'm going to go through the pain of taking my belt off and all that type of stuff because I got to look different.
Yeah.
I can't be in hoodies and stuff like that. So how do you, a man comes in and you assess them. How do you assess them and recommend and put them in one of these categories?
Yeah, so, for me, again, right, like I'm Rosetta Stone.
Yeah.
So the first thing I got to do is I got to understand who you are, the environments that you operate in, and also, like, for you, 5-10 years, big picture, what are you trying to communicate about yourself? So a lot of times with clients, I'll ask, okay, well, what do you do? Okay, do you client face a lot? If you client face, what are the type of clients that you're client facing with? What's the demographic? What's the age, right? What are you trying to achieve when you're client facing? Okay, now based on these things, based on the clients that you're interacting with, the age group, what are you looking to actually communicate to them? Okay, well, based on that, you realize that this group of people, they tend to perceive things this way. They tend to move in this way. So there's a certain image that is attractive to that person. Now, okay, cool. I know that you don't necessarily like to dress up. I know you used to play sports or used to sweats, but let's find a way where we can still prioritize comfort while also having fit and aesthetic. If we can do both, how would that sound to you? Okay, cool. So if we can get you in a suit that you can still do sneakers with in an elevated manner, that's still casual, that has some stretch in the fabric, would you be happy?
Hell yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of how, for me, the conversation generally goes. And, because I've been doing it so long, I have a really good understanding of fabrics, right?
Yeah.
And what fabrics, work for certain guys, what they communicate.
That was something that impressed me, bro.
Yeah.
Because you were telling me about the sheep and the wool. And I'm like, huh? Like, that impressed me. Talk about where did this knowledge, was it just because of how long?
No, well, I mean, it's a lot of things, man. How long I've been in the game. I've styled well over 1,000 clients, man. And then even like the training, right? Like I went through a lot of training, right, and learning. And then just, practice, man. You could read about karate all day long, but until you get kicked in the face, you can't use it. Yeah. So for me, I always tell people, man, I spent 6 figures in clothing before I made 6 figures in clothing.
Wow.
Now, the lesson in that is not to overspend, but the lesson is in whatever space that you're looking to operate in, you need to invest in that space, right? So the reason I was even able to come up with the 3 archetypes is because I'm a junior in college, right? Trying to figure out, okay, if I go to this class, how do I wear a suit and it not come across as like lame or trying too hard? Okay, if I go to an after party in a house that I dress to where it doesn't look awkward, because obviously I can't do a suit in the house, but I want to be well dressed. Okay, if I'm going to the club or if I'm going to this event on campus, how should I dress? So real time, I'm experimenting with how people are receiving different levels of clothing from me. So that repetition and that live practice is actually what allowed me to develop a greater understanding of fabric mix, fabric composition, what different fabrics blend well with each other, what they communicate, what looks more formal versus what looks more casual.
Yeah.
And that's really what kind of generated my understanding.
Bro, so let's do a live situation. Yeah. Because next week, I have an event to speak in Arizona.
Okay, perfect.
This is going to be for people who buy businesses. So it's a lot of millionaires, people who are doing like incredible things, having crazy exits, 7-8 figure exits. And it's going to be about 300 people in the room. And I want to dress decently. Now, these people typically dress, they're not suit. The majority isn't suit wearing type of guys, but they dress nice. What would you recommend to be on stage? How do I?
Yeah. So a couple of things. Arizona is already a little bit more of a let me put it this way, a more conservative space, I'm assuming, right? So these are more on the conservative end of a demographic. Would you say that's correct?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So first thing, I wouldn't do anything loud. right? Because that's probably going to turn them off, right? And you don't want them to be turned off by what you're wearing. So I'm probably going to say in a conservative color range, my first option would be something navy. Now, when you say they dress well but not dress up, I'm assuming they're more like sports coat denim type guys.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think here's what you do. I think you do a navy suit, but instead of doing a navy business suit, what you do is you do a navy jersey knit fabric suit. So something that's maybe a little bit more casual, but it's still a full suit, top to bottom. You pair it with a nice navy sneaker, maybe a navy sneaker from Zegna, right? Because it's more of a formal style sneaker. You don't want to do like a Balenciaga. It's too chunky. It's too loud. You want to do something that's more of a tasteful sneaker, like a Zegna sneaker. The next thing I would do is I would either do a knit, right? Like a knit crew neck, similar to what I'm wearing. Or what you could do is just a nice baby blue shirt, right? Or even a baby blue popover, because that's a more casual option of a shirt. Simple pocket square, right? You can either do a nice baby blue to match it with what we call a TV fold, or some type of light blue wool silk linen, or, we're going into winter now, so more of maybe a wool blend, something that's a little bit heavier. And that would probably be what I would recommend. So that way, not only are you able to elevate yourself as a speaker, right? Because you don't want to be dressed the same as everyone in the crowd, because you still need to be dressed one level above, but you also don't want to lose them by coming across too stiff, right? Because they might be like, he's doing too much.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a perfect mix, right? Like I said, navy jersey suit, specifically, even if you can find a drawstring, right? Like a navy drawstring suit makes a lot of sense. Nice navy sneaker, and either a navy knit, so it's more of a monochromatic look, or a baby blue long sleeve popover.
Jeez, bro. I just shopped in my head. Yeah. I'm like, oh man, like I'm taking notes, because I can see that. Yeah. I couldn't see it before. Legit. I'm like, man, what am I gonna put on at this damn thing, man? Right? Because I'm going through this transformation and trying to step it up. But it's like, okay, how do I gauge this? And in 0. whatever seconds, you just broke this down on the spot. So one thing I noticed from even starting to talk to you about this is it started to make me walk a little different. It started to make me talk a little different. Just because of my intention in how I want to present myself. How have you seen that transform men in their own lives, and how it makes them feel about themselves and their relationships or marriage?
Man, I love it. So the first thing is the confidence, man. I think the text I love seeing is when guys say, man, my wife just saw that suit on and she almost didn't let me out the house. Right? Yeah. Man, my wife saw that suit on and she couldn't get her hands off me. Right? Or for my other guys, man, look, I went out to the party or I went out to my event, bro, and everyone kept saying how they loved the suit, man. They couldn't stop. Right? Like those are the messages I really love, and seeing what it does for men's confidence, right? Like seeing a man maybe walk in, slouched, to now he walking with, his chest out, his shoulders are back. It's something amazing that happens when, as a man, you start taking accountability with your appearance. Right? There's a confidence that happens. Right? And the thing I love about it is, obviously as a man, you have to be able to give positive feedback internally. But it is something amazing that happens when you start getting feedback from other people. It is. Right? Because now you're really internalizing it. It's like somebody who thinks they can sing, right? You can have all the confidence in the world that you think you sing, but every time you're singing and people start, plugging their ears, there is a little bit of crack in the inside. Like, damn, maybe I'm not as nice as I think I am. Yeah. But it's a whole other thing when you start, oh, wow, these people clapping. Oh, wow, I'm selling out. Yeah. There's a different level of confidence, right? That you now have, social proof that you now have when you're able to couple that internal confidence with, hey, the external is also reflecting how I internally feel about myself. Because sometimes that is a little bit important.
To me, it's necessary.
It is a little bit important.
Like let's not act like we don't have egos at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Working out, it helps health and all of that. But man, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, ooh, boy, right? Like, we're not gonna act like this is the man cave. Let's just be real about it, right? Absolutely. But when it comes to bro, that feeling and look, because bro, ever since being mindful, a little bit more mindful, it goes a long way. And so my brand, I want to be the Emirates of my space in personal development and relationships and that type of stuff. And so now I'm like, man, okay, I gotta find a new standard, right? And what are the steps do I take to get to that standard?
Right.
Because I want my men to also now be like, I want that. And that was one of the things that like no pause. It was like when I went to your page, I'm like, I gotta be friends with this dude.
Yeah, man. And again, I think too, what's amazing for men is when you start seeing also the response that comes from women, and also even like the way people approach you now, right? The things and how they approach you, how they speak to you. All of these things are very, very different.
Kind of change
when you start changing the way that you dress. Right, you know, if you notice a girl's always talking to you crazy, you might need a little way. Look, man.
Yeah.
Because if you look like, oh, this man looks like he mean busy. He's not tolerating any nonsense.
Right.
Right. There is a very distinct change that happens when you start managing your appearance properly. Now, look, here's the thing: you still have to have the internal. Because what I'm not saying, because if you don't have the internal, you won't be able to manage these relationships. And these opportunities that you attract, you still have to have the internal part, right?
It's because not one without the other.
Because eventually people are going to find out, right? You know, whether you're a diamond or cubic zirconium. Yeah. Because when you get put under that pressure, one's going to bend, the other's going to still stay solid.
Right.
So you still got to have that.
Yeah.
But to your point, it makes it so much easier where you can attract versus having to put up way more shots to get the same level of output.
Bro. And as real estate investors, this is like doing inbound versus outbound leads, right? Like you got inbound leads, you know these leads is warm or hot. Like they buying something from you. Bro, this is good because I remember I heard you say sometime you were on a podcast that the way you dress is your call card. Right? Because my question was gonna be, how do you attract clients, right?
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, you kind of heard me say on that pod. Is just like, man, if I want to attract clients, if I really want to attract clients at this point, right, I just step outside. It's literally that simple. I dress up, I step outside, and I go to an area that has the type and level of client that can buy my product or service. Sit at the bar, dress nice, somebody will talk to me 9 times out of 10. It's literally that simple. Right?
Yeah.
Understanding what traffic to play in, right? Because, another one of my friends, he gave me this, and I love this saying. He said, Joe, if you play in traffic long enough, you have the right type of accidents. And man, that's so true. And look, Atlanta, we got a lot of personal injury attorneys, so man, you get one little tap. Oh my God. Hey, you in the front of the car through the window. Like, man, I just tapped you. Right? But that's really how life is. If you play a traffic long and if you have the right type of accent, you just got to understand what street to play on. And for me, like, I understand my demographic and my market. So I know the places in Atlanta to go to if I'm really trying to attract a client. Other than that, Instagram, right? But now it's at the point to where, man, I just get referrals. I do my best to give my clients 110% in terms of how they look, how the things are styled. And from that, people will ask my clients, like, man, who made that? Right? Where did you get that from? Yeah. And, from that, it's just, man, it's referrals.
Bro, for me, and I know for a lot of men that's listening, I'm very, your creative gland is very different than mine. I'm very like, this black with this black and white, or this and this, and how you put things together, bro, is very difficult for me. My brain doesn't think in that level of creativity. How do you work with people to help them and ask a question like I just asked, like, hey man, I got the speaking event X, Y, and Z. It's good that you only work with high performing clients, so you're not gonna get people that's just kicking tires, right?
Yeah.
But how do people work with you to say, like, teach me how to get to that place of being able to put some things together?
Well, I think it's levels, right? So level one, I don't start with the weeds with clients. I start with the roots. So what I mean by that is, if a client has no reference point and is not good at all at putting things together, I'm not talking about color palettes. I don't want to go too deep into that. I just want to go into, what are you trying to communicate? Then once I have that information, then I go backwards into giving him the fabrics and the clothes that I think make sense, and I teach him why it makes sense. But I don't start with the fabrics and clothes first, and then there's going to be no connection. I start with what he needs, and then I start explaining to him why it makes sense. And then the next process for me is just educating and giving the client my eye, right? Because really all it is, because I didn't used to be creative or putting stuff together, but it's like with anything. You go in the gym, you lift more weights, you gain more muscle.
Get better, yeah.
Same thing with your eye and your taste level. The more you start to be aware of certain things, you start to see it and you start to look at it differently. So it's a progressive thing. So every, appointment I have with my client, I'm teaching them why, like the why behind why I'm making that decision and how they should process it when they're looking at it. Again, I don't like to go too technical with them and say, I just like to apply the why and the context behind why the fabric makes sense. Yeah. So, instead of saying, this is a Super 150 and you shouldn't, no, I won't do that. I'll say, hey, look, you see how this client has, or how this fabric has a little bit more of a sheen on it? All right, this is what's called a wet fabric. Whenever you see fabrics that are wet fabric and have a little bit more of a sheen, they tend to transition and read more formally. So if you're trying to go into a formal environment, just know you want to look for a fabric that's a little bit more wet. Now, if you're looking to do something more casually, you want to do what we call a dry fabric. What's a dry fabric? You're familiar with denim, right? You know how denim's a little bit drier, a little bit more coarse, a little bit more rougher. Well, that transitions or reads more casual. So if you want a suit that can transition casually, or maybe you can wear it as a sports coat and pair it with a denim, go with a dry fabric, right? Like, these are the things. And now when clients see it, they're like, oh, that makes so much more.
Bro, you just blew my mind.
Yeah. They're like, oh, that makes so much more sense. Because a lot of times what dudes, they'll try to pair a formal jacket as a sports coat and then pair it with a denim. And it always looks weird. Yeah. But guys won't know like why it looks weird. They're just like, like something's off. And that's why. Even down to like the sneaker situation. Like, dudes try to, pair Balenciagas with suits and wonders why it doesn't work. It's because that sneaker's too clunky. So if you have a very fitted trouser, but a huge sneaker at the bottom, from a proportion standpoint, it looks off. Yeah. So you need something that's more tailored to the foot. You need more like a trainer, like a Stan Smith Adidas, like that classic style trainer shoe is going to be more in line with what you need, even like a Common Project, things like that. So it's really kind of breaking it down from that perspective and relating and meeting the client where they're at and speaking in language that they understand. Because that's a lot of times, especially menswear, people are really bad at it, especially because it's a very stiff industry. They don't speak in language that the client understands. And they're too focused on flexing their knowledge versus just helping the client and speaking where they're at.
Man, that's so good, bro. You've helped me, and I'm sure a ton of other people, like, crazily right now. Last question. So you're a master at just knowing how to dress, how to market, where to go, all that type of stuff. You know how to get in the right traffic. How do you deviate or avoid getting in an accident and navigate from the attraction of the million females that's just like...
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for a guy, and I was actually talking with a couple of my guys the other day, is at the end of the day, you always have to stay true to your vision. You always have to stay true to your vision, right? And if you stay true to your vision and your North Star, all the things don't really matter. Jeez. Because a lot of guys, what happens is, again, they get lost in the weeds, right? And they don't pay attention to the root, and they get off track. And I'll even say this, man. And I was thinking about this the other day because our men's group, right? We had this trip where we went to Yellowstone, beautiful, beautiful place, man. If you ever have a chance to go to Yellowstone, you have to go there. It's an amazing, amazing place. But on one of our last days there, we went up and we did this hike up this mountain. And as we're going up, I mean, bro, this thing is like the hardest thing in the world while we're going up, right? So golly, like it literally, bro, it was raining too, and we're having to decide whether we're gonna go back down the mountain or up the mountain while we're in the middle of the mountain. And then, it's extremely steep. So it was hard. But we finally got up to the top of the mountain. But you know what was so interesting?
Tell me.
You would think that the hardest part, the most dangerous part, was going up the mountain. But you know what we quickly realized the reality was? You know what the most dangerous part of that hike was?
What's that?
It was going down the mountain. And the reason going down the mountain was so dangerous because most people don't exercise the same prudence that they did going up the mountain as they do down the mountain. And the thing about going down the mountain is when you finally get to the top, you have what's called momentum. And when you have momentum, things tend to come faster. And yes, success comes faster, but so does failure, especially when you're not watching your step, right? Because now, you think you're going fast, your feet are dragging, you're like, oh, I'm almost done, and you trip on a root.
Yeah.
Now you're tumbling down the mountain.
Yeah, you're rolling down.
And what I tell guys is, man, you have to always exercise prudence, even more so when you start reaching the top.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Because now that momentum really will kill you.
Yeah.
It is sad to say now you can make less mistakes. It's like you think that you get to the top and people would at least give you the benefit of the doubt to make some because you're not perfect. Now they want you to make less mistakes.
Yeah.
As if you're not human. Right?
Yeah, man.
And that's the scary thing. So that's why I tell guys, man, you have to be careful because that momentum, it can bless you, but it also can kill you.
Yeah. And this is where coming back to that standard, keeping a standard as to who you want to be, that vision, and just staying true to it, bro. Yeah. This was amazing, man. Man, thank you for having me, brother. Thank you for being on and dropping so much game, guys. Yeah. I hope that you've gotten so much that you're about to go out and buy something that makes your wife be like, bro, you ain't going nowhere. You staying in. How can people contact you?
Absolutely, man. So look, if you want to contact me, you want to connect with me, follow me on Instagram at mr.jhines, mr.jhines. Would love to connect with you. Would love to work with you. And again, hope to talk with you guys soon.
Amazing, man. Guys, when y'all start seeing me step my look up, this is the reason why right here. All right? Another episode in the Man Cave, y'all. Love these talks. It's really amazing. I hope you got incredible value. Peace and love. Until next time. Peace.